During the 1800s, the infamous P.T. Barnum became renowned as the Great American Showman. Barnum specialized in showcasing odd and fascinating attractions to audiences eager to pay for something beyond the ordinary. One of his main methods for drawing crowds was exploiting unusual traits in human beings. This display became known as his freak show, which toured across the globe and inspired countless other circuses to launch their own twisted versions. So, join us as we dive into the lives of 15 craziest circus freaks that actually exist. Number 15. The Wild Men of Borneo. Barnum never stopped recruiting dwarves, but with brothers Hiram and Barney Davis, he took it in a new direction. Both men were mentally disabled, and each weighed only 45 pounds. But what shocked crowds wasn't their size, it was their strength. Each could reportedly lift up to 300 pounds and often picked audience members up as part of their act. Barnum renamed them Waino and Plutonor and introduced them as the Wild Men of Borneo. He fabricated a backstory that they were captured natives from the island of Borneo. Audiences believed the myth, and the brothers became a sensation. They performed for years and earned over $200,000, which in today's money made them millionaires. As they aged, both began losing their eyesight. They lived into their 90s, well cared for, but the lie about their identity stuck. Even in death, newspapers referred to Plutonor as if he truly had been a wild man from Borneo. Number 14. French Hercules. Pierre Gasnier from France became one of the earliest and most respected strongmen of the old circus era, performing for Barnum and Bailey. Despite his small frame, only 5 feet 3 inches tall and 143 pounds, he shocked crowds with his raw strength. Gasnier could tear a deck of cards clean in half, but his most famous feat was breaking a chain across his chest by expanding his rib cage. It wasn't just the trick, it was the sheer power behind it. What amazed audiences most was how someone so small could outperform men twice his size. He once lifted a dumbbell weighing 260 pounds straight above his head, a feat even big athletes couldn't duplicate. Gasnier became proof that strength wasn't about size, it was about will. He died in 1923, but his name still stands as one of the greats who helped shape the golden age of circus strongmen. Number 13. The Puppet Woman. Back in the days, if you were born different, the world didn't hide you, it displayed you. Lucia Zarate was born in Mexico in 1864, weighing only 8 ounces and standing 7 inches tall. People described her as a finger puppet, so tiny she could rest in the palm of a hand. Doctors doubted she'd survive infancy, but she grew up to become the smallest recorded human being in history, weighing less than a cat as an adult. When Lucia came to America at 12, the circus world couldn't get enough of her. She earned $20 an hour, a staggering amount at the time, and became the highest-paid dwarf performer alive. Crowds called her the Puppet Woman, fascinated by her delicate size and lively personality. But her fame ended tragically in 1890 when her train got trapped by a snowstorm in the Rocky Mountains. She froze to death at only 26. For someone so small, Lucia left behind an enormous legend. Number 12. The Iron Samson. Alexander Zass was born in 1888 in Vilna and spent most of his early life in Russia. Like many young men of his era, his fascination with strength began after watching a circus strongman perform. He started training with tree branches, chains, and homemade weights, building his body without proper equipment. Over time, he developed incredible power, capable of carrying a horse across his shoulders and bending thick steel bars with his bare hands. His chain-breaking stunts became the highlight of his performances. In 1914, during World War I, Zass served in the Russian army and was captured by Austrian forces. While imprisoned, he continued training by pulling on chains and bars in his cell, developing the concept of isometric strength. He later escaped and returned to performing, earning the title the Iron Samson. Zass died in 1962, leaving behind a legacy not just of muscle, but of willpower, endurance, and human resilience. Number 11. The Chinese Giant. Chung Yu-sing stood over 8 feet tall and weighed 364 pounds. P.T. Barnum loved putting him in long, flowing Chinese robes, claiming the fabric made him look even taller and cooler. He told the public that Chang was 9 feet tall and leaned into every detail to build that image. Chang played along, highlighting how rare it was to see someone Chinese who defied the stereotype of being short. It worked ideally. Audiences were hooked, fascinated by the contradiction. There's not much documentation on Chang's time with Barnum's freak show, so it's likely his contract was short. He likely performed briefly, collected his earnings, and returned to a more private life. Still, for the time he was on stage, Chang understood exactly how to use his difference. He wasn't just tall, he was clever. Barnum sold the myth, but Chang wore it with ease, knowing the real spectacle was how easily the crowd bought into what they wanted to see. Number 10. Louise L. Louise was born with 4 legs. Well, yes, like for real. The extra pair grew from her pelvis, 17 pounds of motionless flesh that hung uselessly at her sides. Promoters gave her a French name, La Dame à Quatre Jambes, as if the accent could make it sound glamorous. She wasn't French. She was a mother of 2 healthy daughters, just a woman with a body the world didn't know how to see. Audiences paid to stare, not realizing that her only act was existence itself. She didn't perform tricks or illusions. She simply stood there, calm and unembellished, while the curious whispered. There's barely anything written about her life, only fragments, tour posters, a few brief mentions, then silence. Maybe she retired. Maybe she disappeared. Nobody really knows. But her story lingers because she never played in the circus. She stood in her truth, unpolished and unashamed. For some, that was shocking enough. Louise didn't need to entertain. She just existed. And that was her defiance. Number 9. Eugen Sandow. Eugen is often called the father of modern bodybuilding. Born in 1867 in Prussia, now part of Germany, Sandow began as a sideshow strongman. With the help of showman Florenz Ziegfeld, he shifted focus, not just to show strength, but to showcase his physique like it was a sculpture. He made muscle displays the highlight of his act. Sandow toured Europe and, in 1901, organized the first ever bodybuilding contest, the Great Competition, held at London's Royal Albert Hall. He judged it himself, alongside Sir Charles Laws and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The show was a hit, with tickets sold out and hundreds turned away at the doors. When Sandow died in 1925, newspapers reported he had suffered a stroke while pushing his car out of the mud. But his death was likely due to issues from syphilis. His wife requested that he be buried in an unmarked grave at Putney Vale Cemetery. Even in death, Sandow is a legend. Number 8. John Rogan. John William Budd. Rogan was born in 1867 and grew into something the world couldn't look past, 8 feet 9 inches tall. He remains the tallest African American ever recorded and second only to Robert Wadlow in history. His growth spurt began around 13, bringing pain with every inch. Ankylosis locked his joints and twisted his spine until he could barely move. But Rogan refused to become a circus act. He turned down every showman and promoter who came calling. Instead, he painted portraits, sold postcards, and made a modest living his own way. Locals described him as gentle, polite, and deeply spiritual. He lived humbly, but with pride. When he died in 1905, his body was buried in an unmarked concrete grave to prevent grave robbers from stealing it. That was his world, a world obsessed with spectacle. Rogan never sold his height. He carried it with dignity, speaking volumes without ever stepping on stage. Number 7. The Man Turning to Stone. Charles S. Porter was born in New Haven and lived an ordinary life until age 30, when his body began betraying him. He suffered from fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, a disease that slowly turns muscle and tissue into bone. Each year, he stiffened more until he could barely move. Instead of hiding, Charles exhibited himself under the name The Man Turning to Stone. He joined sideshows not for fame, but survival. He didn't juggle or dance. He simply existed before curious strangers, letting them witness his decline. Audiences stared because they couldn't comprehend such stillness. Over time, his name vanished from programs, his story reduced to rumor. No one knows when he died, only that he disappeared from the carnival routes. But the memory of him, sitting motionless, half statue, half man, stayed. Charles Porter wasn't a spectacle. He was a mirror showing what every gawker feared most: the fragility of their own flesh. Number 6. The White and Black Twins. In the 1860s, twins Helen Ann and Henry Sedham Walker were born to black parents, but Helen had albinism, and Henry didn't. That difference made them a sensation. For years, they were displayed in traveling museums, advertised as the White and Black Twins. Posters exaggerated their story, claiming they'd been born on May 2, 1856, and exhibited from St. Louis to New Orleans and Pittsburgh. Census records listed them as mulatto, living with their mother in New York. Their faces appeared on exhibition cards and museum flyers. After the show years, Henry faded from record, listed once as a doorman in Pittsburgh in 1870. Helen lived longer, marrying 3 times, including to another albino performer named Charles Price. Their descendants only recently rediscovered their history and marked both graves with proper headstones. They were displayed as curiosities, but they endured as people. In a world obsessed with difference, they left behind something even rarer: a trace. Number 5. Clyde Tiny Hicks. Clyde Tiny Hicks wasn't tiny at all. He was a mountain of a man. Born in Illinois, he joined the circus in 1945 as a fat man, but people came for more than his size. He had presence. Depending on the poster, he weighed anywhere between 500 and 762 pounds, but the number didn't matter. The fascination did. Tiny toured with the Ringling Bras, standard shows, and even performed under Ward Hall, the king of sideshows. He once filled Madison Square Garden with gasps and applause. But the road wasn't kind. After a brutal stint in the Deep South, Hicks swore never to perform there again, saying it was no good for fat shows. Superstition or experience, he meant it. For 20 years, he was a sideshow regular, massive, confident, and magnetic. When he finally retired, he went home to Warren, Illinois. For once, he wasn't a spectacle, just Clyde, sitting quietly, finally free from the world's curious eyes. Now let's move to number 4. Ernie DeFort. Ernie was given a title before he could speak. Ernie Len, the world's strangest living boy. His parasitic twin, named Len, grew from his chest, motionless but visible, a haunting reminder of the body's mysteries. Surgeons removed Len in 1943, calling it a medical marvel. For Ernie, it was survival. Doctors studied him like a specimen, while carnivals used his image to fill tents. He grew up in headlines, known for something he never chose. As he aged, he slipped from the spotlight, said to have married and lived quietly somewhere in the Midwest. The medical reports kept his body alive in ink, but his own words vanished completely. Maybe that's how he wanted it, to have control for once over who looked and who didn't. His story began as a sideshow, but it ended as something rare for men like him, his own, unexhibited and unseen. Number 3. R. H. Hubbard. R. H. Skeets. Hubbard did things that would make most people look away. He hammered 8-inch nails through his face, pulled wagons with metal hooks through his eyelids. No tricks, no illusions, just pain, precision, and control. Born sometime after World War II, Skeetz's story is mostly undocumented. No birth records, few photos, just his name scribbled across sideshow posters. They called him the Human Blockhead, the Torture King, the Human Plank. On stage, he never spoke. He just pressed the spike in, waited for the audience to react, and stood still as they screamed or applauded. Off stage, no one knew if he ever winced or broke down. Maybe he didn't. For him, it wasn't art. It was survival, rent, food, bills, nothing more. He didn't wear sequins, didn't chase fame, didn't pretend to be special. He just endured. The pain was the act. And in a strange way, that quiet endurance became its own kind of courage. Number 2. Little Count Teddy. Theo Salem, aka Little Count Teddy, was a born entertainer. Born in 1885 in Louisville, he stood even smaller than Tom Thumb, but his act wasn't his size, it was his wit. He performed satirical recitals, poetry, and something he called laughology, a blend of comedy and commentary. His posters promised laughs, lectures, and satire, all under his signature slogan, "Smaller than Tom and still single." Behind the humor, though, was an independent performer. Teddy managed himself, booked his own shows, and toured across the country without the backing of any freak show. He didn't need a made-up origin story or a circus banner, just a stage and an audience. His small stature never defined him, his words did. He joked, mocked, and moved people with his voice. He wasn't chasing sympathy or shock value. He turned difference into dialogue and left behind laughter instead of pity. In short, Count Teddy wasn't displayed, he performed. Number 1. General Willis Carver and his mother. Willis Carver wasn't just a performer. He was one half of a duo that never split. Small in stature but huge in spirit, he shared every stage with his mother, Madame Carver, a famed fat lady whose presence silenced crowds. Their act thrived on contrast. Willis in a miniature military uniform beside his towering mother, but beyond the billing, they were family first. Together, they toured with the greats, Dan Rice, the Sells Brothers, Pullman, and Hamilton. From Chicago to New York, they filled dime museums with laughter and curiosity. There were no scandals, no headlines, just years of loyal work and endless travel. Willis died in 1898 at only 30 years old, leaving behind a legacy built on loyalty and love. In a world that sold humanity as spectacle, the Carvers turned it into something genuine. People came for the contrast, but stayed for their warmth. Under the banners, they were simply mother and son, earning a living side by side. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.